Good evening and welcome to the January 19th council meeting. If you'd please stand and join us in the flag salute. It's going to be led by Mayor Pro Tem Lucio this evening.
Please put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a special presentation this evening. It's Business of the Month Award for January 2021. We're excited to begin the new year by relaunching the City of Chino Business of the Month program. As businesses in our community continue to deal with the many challenges the COVID-19 pandemic has placed on their operations, I want to remind business owners that the City Council and I stand with them. Being a council member for several years and now mayor, I have witnessed enough to say that Chino will soon get through this together. The Chino Business of the Month program identifies businesses of distinction, whether they are hidden gems or Chino institutions. Through the program, we hope to celebrate their success and honor their contributions. Every month, the City Council and I will be honoring those businesses that help make Chino the incredible city that we call home. The January Chino Business of the Month is Diamond Wipes International Incorporated. I'd like to call up Lance Leonard, the CEO, and Jessica Lum, President of Diamond Wipes. Please join me up here. Come up here. Diamond Wipes, headquartered in Chino, has been in business for 26 years, but has called Chino its home for the last 11 years, providing over 400 jobs to our residents. Diamond Wipes is an essential manufacturer of sanitizing, disinfecting, facial, baby, and body wipes. All of their products are manufactured in the United States using high-quality materials. When there was a shortage of disinfecting wipes during the height of COVID-19 pandemic, Diamond Wipes secured sanitizing and disinfecting wipes for Chino City Hall, the Chino Police Department, and local constituent Congresswoman Norma Torres. I want to thank you, Lance and Jessica, for making Chino your headquarters and for being a partner with the city and the community. Please join me in congratulating Diamond Wipes International Incorporated as our January Business of the Month recipient. And I'd like to present this certificate that reads, "Congratulations to Diamond Wipes International Incorporated, January 2021 Chino Business of the Month. The City of Chino thanks you for being a part of the Chino community," presented by the Mayor and the City Council, this date, January 19th, 2021.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it very much, the recognition you've given Diamond Wipes on behalf of the 350 plus colleagues that we have down the street. We'd like to thank the city for all the support that you've given us over the last 11 years. We're continuing to grow and continuing to be a bigger part of the community, and we really do appreciate everything that the community offers to us. So thank you all for your support, and thank you very much for the recognition.
Thank you for helping us.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here this evening.
You bet.
Also, I'd like to tell the Chino residents, we'd like you to help us make sure we recognize and applaud other exceptional Chino businesses by suggesting you or submitting your nominations to www.cityofchino.org/biz awards. Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, do we have any agenda changes or reorders?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to or request that the council remove item number 8 from the agenda and return to staff for further review.
Okay.
And that's the only change I'm recommending. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, next on our agenda is public announcements. First, I'd like to invite folks to come out to the 21st Annual Run for Russ Memorial 5K Run and Community Walk event on Saturday, February 6th at the Civic Center. This event honors the life of Chino police officer Russ Miller, who was tragically struck by a drunk driver in the line of duty on February 1st, 2000. Those interested in being a part of this outstanding event can register early or participate virtually by paying $30 or pay $35 if registering on the day of the event. Groups of 10 or more will be charged $25 each, and those 12 years or younger will only be charged $20. Of course, to ensure social distancing and everyone's safety, participants will be able to begin the race between 8 and 8:30. Masks will be required until participants begin the race, and there will be no food or water available to participants during or after the race this year. For more information, please visit https://my.racewire.com/athletes and search for Run for Russ 2021. Also, I'd like to provide updated information on the COVID-19 vaccines available in San Bernardino County. As of this past Friday, January 15th, 2021, the County of San Bernardino is administering vaccines for all tiers within Phase 1A. In other words, the county is now providing vaccines for healthcare professionals, long-term care facility residents, and all those folks over the age of 65. Vaccinations are being administered at several locations throughout the county. The closest San Bernardino public health site administering vaccinations is located at Ontario Health Center at 150 East Holt Boulevard in Ontario. Also, 2 Save-On pharmacies in Chino Hills are also offering vaccinations. These are located at 3255 Grand Avenue and 15970 Los Serranos City Club Drive in Chino Hills. For all other locations and any questions, please visit https://sbcovid19.com. And lastly, we sadly will be adjourning tonight's meeting in the memory of Riva Salter, who recently passed away. As many of you know, Riva was a staple in this community. Her commitment to public service in the Chino community was second to none. And beyond her numerous donations to jumpstart vital programs like the Chino Boxing Club and the Chino Neighborhood House, Riva also served her community as a Chino Planning Commissioner for 29 years, ranging from December 1976 to January 2006. For all her outstanding achievements, Mrs. Salter was also the first recipient of the Spirit of Achievement Award, accumulation of her dedicated and selfless public service, which also contributed to us all affectionately referring to her as Ma Chino. Riva will be sorely missed, but her contributions to this community will impact future generations for years. Our hearts go out to all of her family and loved ones during this very difficult time. Next on our agenda is public communication. This is the time and the place for the general public to address the council on items that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. We'd like to hear your concerns but cannot take any action due to the item not being agendized. Our first written request to speak is Jared Caballero. He is representing Calvary Chapel, Chino Valley, and is going to lead us in prayer this evening. I encourage all of you who would like to join us to please stand. Jared?
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council and City staff for allowing me to be here. Representing Pastor David Rosales in Calvary Chapel, Chino Valley Church nearby, I just wanted to come and grateful for the honor to open up in prayer. Would you pray with me? Father, we just come before you tonight, Lord. And you have seen all that has transpired, Lord, even from the new year till now. And you know the plans you have for this city, for the residents, for the families, for the marriages and children, for our schools, our businesses, our first responders, for our fire department, police department, Lord, our hospitals, the small businesses, large businesses, Lord, our leaders here in this council, Lord. And so, God, we just come before you tonight. We ask for your wisdom, that you would lead this city, Lord. Lead our leaders. Give them your wisdom, your counsel, Lord, your direction. And may everything work out for your glory. Would you get us through these tough times, Lord? Would you be with the families that are hurting, that are mourning, God? Would you be with those who are sick and bring healing, Lord? And would you just touch, Lord, every individual in this community, Lord? May you make us more and more so a compassionate, loving community, Lord. Thank you that we already are known for that and those qualities, and I pray you'd continue that, Lord. Bring unity, Lord. Knit hearts and minds together, Lord, and go before us this season and be with us this night and give our leaders wisdom and give everyone here wisdom, Lord, as we share and as we plan, Lord. And I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Next written request to speak is Steve Eli from IEUA.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council, staff. First off, Happy New Year and congratulations again to you, Mayor, and to Councilmember Flores and Councilmember Comstock. It's welcome. I look forward to working with you on water and wastewater issues in the future. Really briefly, a couple things I just wanted to bring to your attention. We have started the Regional Plan 5 project, the over $400 million project that is mostly funded by very, very, very low interest loans and grants. That is right next to our headquarters on Kimball. If when COVID relaxes a little bit, hopefully we can give tours and do things. We can also do some stuff virtually, but it's not quite the same as being down there. But it is right here in your city, and it is providing significant economic benefit to the area. And most importantly, you know, it's a threefold project. $400 million is a lot of money, but the most significant is accommodating growth, including the preserve. So that's a big issue for us and for you. We're also consolidating some of the operations and modernizing. You know, a lot of our facilities are 50 to 70 years old, and so that's going to take some time. So that's our Regional Plan 5. I'm happy to announce that we have been, it's not awarded yet, but the EPA has picked IEUA's service area to apply for another, what they call WIFIA. It's WIF, I can't remember what all the initials stand for, but it's a low interest loan from the federal government. We do have an over $200 million loan right now for Regional Plan 5, but there's $95 million more of projects around the service area that could be eligible for the similar loans. And the real benefit of the WIFIA loan is that you don't have to start paying until you're done with construction, and then you have 25 years after that. And with the rates that they are, for example, our rate is somewhere in the order of 1% right now for the loan for Regional Plan 5. So these are the kinds of things that our staff is doing constantly, but even more so now with COVID and with the economic issues and the economic impacts. You may recall that we froze all the rates effective July 1 last year to make sure that, you know, that the impacts of COVID weren't enhanced. So we're going to continue to work. We're certainly open to listening anytime. You all have my cell phone number. Anytime you want to communicate. And Matt, I know, meets with my general manager, Shivaji, regularly. And so we've got a great cooperative relationship. Want to keep that going because we are, you know, two public agencies that represent the same people. So with that, unless there's somebody has a question, I just want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Steve. I know your finance department with Christina and Jason Gu are just incredible.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal. They're right on top of everything. So.
Our staff has garnered a reputation both at the federal and state level for doing projects on time, within budget, and most importantly for the government's reporting right and doing it right. Our Consolidated financial reports have been award-winning for 22 years straight. So we're very proud of the staff we have, and I thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, they do a great job. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for being here this evening and bringing us up to date.
Thanks.
Next request to speak is Stubby Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I want to touch on a few things tonight. I've given you some handouts, and I emailed them to the two members who aren't here, so hopefully they have them and can listen along. The first item is not on with the handouts. It regards the policy on accessible pedestrian facilities that we adopted in December of 2019. It's a great policy, but it's not being followed. In November, you guys approved Sarah's Regis project, and we're given a lengthy staff report. Everything that was in that backup package, and I apologize for not making it to that meeting. I had a relapse and I just medically couldn't make it, was a violation of something in our policy. The policy touches on a lot of different codes and areas. It's an amalgamation, but it's also a single point resource, and it is not being used. So a policy that's not being used is like a law that's not enforced. Second item is the top page, that single page regarding the Chino Municipal Code. In 2018, some of you may remember, actually, probably only one of you will remember. We had an issue that I had been complaining about for some time, and that was the constant approval of private streets and single-family residential developments. And we put a stop to that by modifying, by amending the code. The sections that are highlighted, not highlighted, underlined in italics, that's me. That was the section that was added. Private streets that existed prior to the cutoff date, January 1st, 2019, were we allowed to remain if they met all of the code requirements, including accessibility. So I just want to report to you that it is some 2 years now that not a single one of these developments is yet legal because none of them comply with the accessibility requirements. The stapled packet is an amalgamation of a bunch of related codes that I put together. Mayor, you will probably remember this, about 2016 for the council, and I just thought I would redistribute it. This document is a narrative with all of the code sections that overlap and translate into one another that create what we call the accessibility regulations here in California. California's accessibility regulations, with about 3 exceptions, are more stringent than the ADA. For instance, if you built an ADA compliant curb ramp in the city of, or anywhere in the state of California, it would not comply with California law because we have more stringent requirements. Although the federal requirements are catching up quick, the standard will be adjusted in 2023, and it will also include the minimum width of sidewalks at 5 and 6 feet. So when you have time, cruise through this. It's kind of a little refresher, but for some of you, it'll be the first time. And as it goes through, you'll notice that at the very end, there's a section of the government code. And that section of the government code makes you, the governing body, a law enforcement agency. You are responsible for enforcing accessibility laws in the state of California anywhere where the city of Chino spends public funds. If you have any questions, I think you all know how to contact me, but And then the last page is just excerpts from the government code. That's the code that tells us how to govern. These are all from Title I, what's referred to as the accessibility provision, Section 4450. These are all pertinent sections that you should all be very familiar with regarding the applicable dates, which seems to be a problem with staff, that compliance is required by, and who has to enforce it. And again, that's you. 4453, paragraph B, makes you the enforcing agency, which means that findings and decisions per our policy, all of this stuff is actually in our policy, must come before you. It cannot be made by staff alone. They have to come before you, and of course, the only way you can make that decision is in public, which gives it opportunity for public testimony. So hopefully, I haven't given you too much homework, but I think this will be useful as we hit some of these stumbling blocks in the future. Thanks for your time, and I also want to take just a second to thank Public Works, because they're going to be very, very busy tomorrow with all this wind.
That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stubby. Those are the only written requests that we have to speak tonight. Are there any members of the audience that would like to address the council on any items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing then none, we will move on to our consent calendar. It's already been noted that item number 8 is being pulled and sent back to staff. Do council members wish to have any items pulled for discussion? No? Any of those, I failed to note, Councilmember Comstock and Councilmember Hargrove are online listening to the meeting this evening. That's how they're participating. Do either of you two council members wish to have any items pulled from the agenda? Consent calendar?
Mayor, it's Hargrove.
Yes, sir.
I don't have anything pulled.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Karen, do you wish to have any of the consent items pulled?
No, I do not, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, there's a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Lucio
I second the motion.
and second from Councilman Flores. Roll call vote, please, Angela.
Mayor Pro Tem Lucio,
Yes.
Councilmember Flores,
Yes.
Councilmember Comstock,
Yes.
Councilmember Hargrove,
Yes.
Mayor Ulloa.
Yes. The consent calendar, with the exception of item number 8, has been approved unanimously. Next, under public hearings, item number 10, Community Development Block Grant Action Plan Amendment for fiscal years 2019-2020, CDBG CV3. This is to adopt resolution number 2021-003, approving the proposed substantial amendment to the City of Chino's FY 1920 Annual Action Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG CV3 CARES Act funds. I'd like to declare the public hearing open and then ask for a staff report from our Senior Management Analyst, Tracy Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Staff is proposing a substantial amendment to the current CDBG action plan by establishing a new CDBG program, CDBG CV3 CARES. The appropriation of $457,388 as allocated by HUD will provide relief to those financially impacted by the pandemic. These funds will enable city department staff to administer 4 new programs. Details are provided in Exhibit 1, but in summary, these programs include $42,000 for an extended camp scholarship program, providing full-time or full-day supervision during distant learning activities. $43,884 for distance learning, homework, and tutoring assistance. $45,100 for senior care package program. This provides essential hygiene and supplemental food items to homebound seniors. $326,404 of emergency rental assistance. This provides rental assistance for income-eligible households experiencing financial hardship directly related to COVID-19. This could include job loss or a decrease in income. Program eligibility for all programs will be based on income limits per HUD guidelines. Staff has provided the required 5-day public review period, as well as a notice of tonight's public hearing, which was published in the Chino Champion on January 9th. There were no written comments received. Following approval of the amendment, the revised action plan, as well as program procedures, will be submitted to HUD for their approval. This concludes my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Do any members of council have questions for staff? Chris, Mark? Karen or Mark on the phone, do you have any questions?
Mayor, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Mark?
Well, if I can get it off mute. Okay. No, I don't have any changes, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question, Tracy, and that is, how are we informing the public of this help that we have available for them?
We will be informing through our social media platforms to get the information out, as well as on the city website.
Okay, what about the seniors that really don't go online that much? How are we getting the information out to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe through the Senior Center, that's a program that's going to be run through Community Services. So the outreach that they do to the seniors through the center would be able to get that information out to those in need.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'd like to invite the public forward if you have any questions or comments on the program. Okay, seeing none, then we will close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Mayor Pro Tem Lucio,
I second the motion.
second from Councilman Flores. Roll call vote, please, Angela.
Mayor Pro Tem Lucio,
Yes.
Councilmember Flores,
Yes.
Councilmember Comstock,
Yes.
Councilmember Hargrove,
Yes.
Mayor Ulloa.
Yes, item passes unanimously. Item number 11, under new business, introduction of 2021-2029 housing element update. This is to receive a report from staff and the city's housing element consultant on the status of the housing element update. Our staff report this evening will be provided by our Director of Development Services, Mr. Nick Lagori.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As you may be familiar, the state law requires that every city in California update their housing element, which is one of the required elements or chapters of the general plan, every 8 years. So the city has started this process, and we've retained the services of a consultant, Kimley Horn and Associates, to help us do that. Tonight's report is a way of kicking off this process, although staff has been working on it for a few months now. We want to introduce the council to the process and our consultant, talk about schedule and next steps. So Nick Chen with Kimley Horn and Associates is here to give the council a presentation on how the process is working and what to expect in the coming months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, both here and over the phone. As Nick mentioned, my name is Nick Chen. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates, and we've been retained to help with the housing element update for the 6th cycle. I believe we should have a presentation, PowerPoint presentation. There we go. So tonight, as Nick mentioned, we're going to give an overview of the housing element process, how far we've come so far in the update process, and where we still have to go. So tonight, we'll go through the housing element update process. I'll talk a little bit about what the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, is. Talk about the city's recent appeal efforts, as well as how Measure M works with the city's housing element update. Then go into a little bit on our community outreach efforts and talk about what's next. So a little on the housing element update process. Nick touched on it. It's one of the required elements of the city's general plan. It's actually a little unique in that it's the only element of the general plan that requires certification and review by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. All other elements are updated periodically, but none require state review and certification. It provides goals, policies, objectives, and action programs that the city will commit to over the next 8 years, with the planning cycle being 2021 to 2029 for the 6th cycle, to promote the growth of housing at all income levels. It also identifies Chino's needs, projected housing needs, as determined by the state and by SCAG through their various methodologies, again, through those different income levels. And I'll go through what those are in just a couple slides. I'll go through. Oh, I skipped back. So housing elements are updated for a few different reasons. One is to show that the city of Chino has the ability to accommodate the anticipated future growth in terms of housing. This does not mean that the city is required to build these units, only that they're required to show through the housing element process that the city has the ability to accommodate these units should the market decide to build them and should they become necessary to be built. It also allows the community to engage in this process. There's multiple community outreach efforts as well as a public review draft that will be circulated throughout the community and available for review for 30 days later on in the process. I'll touch on that a little bit more as I go through the schedule. It also allows, most importantly, for the city to become eligible for certain state grants and funding. The city, because they have a compliant housing element, is able to be eligible for these programs. In a couple of slides, we'll talk about what happens if the city does not have a compliant housing element. And lastly, it just ensures that the city complies with all new state laws. There are now a lot of new housing state laws that have come out the last couple of years, and more that will continue to come out over the next couple of years. And so it ensures the city at that point in time is compliant with all those state laws. So a couple different housing element features. These are the primary components of the housing element. The first is a population and housing profile. This allows us to establish a baseline based on census data and other relevant information to show what potential unique characteristics should be planned for in terms of Chino's housing growth. The next is an evaluation of existing programs and policies. The city currently has a fifth cycle housing element that has a housing plan in it as well that established a number of programs with actions on them. This is a review to see how the city did over the last 8 years, or the fifth cycle, to see if these programs should be continued, if they were successful, and should be completed, or if they should be adapted to be a slightly different program in the sixth cycle. Next, they go over a view of housing constraints and resources. Constraints are anything that may inhibit the development of housing within the city. Largely, these consist of what we call governmental and non-governmental constraints. So governmental constraints are potential fee processing, timelines in the development review process, anything that the city has the ability to change. Non-governmental are market conditions. They're things that the city does not have the power to change, but should be identified in the housing element anyways. Resources are then what we identify in terms of available resources to try and get rid of those constraints. The biggest resource the city has is the availability of land. Understand in Chino that there's not a ton of land left. There's been a lot of development in Chino recently. But in every city, the identification of land through the sites analysis is one of the biggest resources that the city has. We'll go into that a little bit later. Also, we identify sites to meet the city's RHNA allocation. These sites, as I list in a couple of slides, could be anything from vacant land to underutilized commercial parcels to city-owned parcels. It could really be a number of different parcels. And lastly, we set a new program, so a new set of goals, policies, and objectives for the sixth cycle. Many of these, because this is an update, can be very similar or continuations of the fifth cycle housing element plan and objectives. And some may be new requirements of state law. There are a couple new programs that will be required of the city based on updates to state law. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that the city will have a certified housing element at the end of the process, assuming we go through HCD review and receive that certification from HCD and adopt the housing element locally. So basically what it means is it demonstrates the city is in substantial compliance with state law, with state housing law. If the city does not adopt the housing element locally by October 15th, 2021, which is the deadline for the SCAG region for all cities within the Southern California Association of Government region, there's a couple of different implications that could happen. The first is that potentially, as I touched upon, the city could lose eligibility for state funding and grants, different assistance programs, a couple different programs that are outlined that the city receives currently. The next is the city will be out of compliance and potentially subject to housing-related lawsuits. And lastly, Instead of updating every 8 years, as the city currently does because they're in compliance, the city would be required to update their housing element every 4 years until they strung together, I believe it's 2 consecutive 4-year cycles, and then they go back to the 8-year cycles. So it is definitely not a place that we want to be. We do want to be in compliance. I think we're well on our way to getting there. So I talked about the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, often referred to as RHNA. And essentially, this is the allocation of units at all the different income levels that the city received. So a little bit about the process. Back in, I say, 2017, 2018, the state started to plan for the number of units that they would need to accommodate over this 2021 to 2029 cycle. They came up with a number and allocated it among the different councils of governments, with the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, being the area that Chino sits in. The SCAG region received roughly 1.3 million units and created a methodology to divide those up amongst every jurisdiction, all 191 cities and counties within the SCAG region. And they did it based on a methodology of current need, accessibility to jobs and transit, and a couple other factors as well. So Chino ended up receiving an allocation of 6,959 units. And I'll show on this slide, that's divided across 4 different income categories. These income categories are very low, low, moderate, and above moderate. And they're based on a certain percentage of the area median income, or median family income, for the county of San Bernardino, which for 2020 was 75,300. So you can see the income ranges shown on the screen for each category, and also the number of units that the city has to plan for, to accommodate in each of these different income categories. So how does the city meet its RHNA? They do this primarily through identification of sites that have the characteristics and are reasonably assumed to be able to develop within the planning period. And so this can be, as I mentioned, vacant land, underutilized, publicly owned land, really other locations that don't bear significant constraints, such as environmental hazards, steep slopes. There's an analysis completed on a number of parcels that show analysis of existing leases and a couple other factors to determine the viability of these parcels and whether they really are realistic to redevelop within the next 8 years or not. The city also, because of its location, size, and population, has what's called a default density. And this is 30 units an acre. This is very common for most jurisdictions within SCAG have this 30 units an acre. Some have it 20 if you're a very small community, and some have 25. This essentially is a density that HCD has determined if units are able to be built at 30 units an acre, there's a likelihood that they will be affordable. So there's a couple different methodologies we can use, but if we identify sites that accommodate up to 30 dwelling units an acre, HCD will accept this as being able to potentially meet the lower income RHNA need. So it goes into a much more detailed strategy. For tonight, I'll leave it at that and save that for another update. But I do want to touch on the city's sphere of influences area as well. We heard it very early on that there was potential that some people may say, well, we have a lot of sphere of influence areas we could potentially put housing in. That area, because it's not currently in the city of Chino, is actually already allocated and considered as part of the county of San Bernardino's RHNA allocation. So the assumption is made that the units will go to the county of San Bernardino because that land is currently there. If somebody does annex a property at some point over the next 8 years from the county to the city, there's a chance that a RHNA transfer will need to occur where those units will then be added to the city's total and taken away from the county of San Bernardino because they've now lost land to be able to accommodate. So currently that's not being considered. I just wanted to mention that. So I mentioned earlier that the city did appeal the RHNA allocation as well. And this was back in October 21st, they submitted the appeal, and just recently, beginning of this month, went before the appeals hearing board, the SCAG RHNA appeal hearing board, and presented the appeal for consideration. The city's appeal was denied, and currently, I believe, only out of the 50 or so appeals that have been heard, only the county of Riverside received a small reduction in units, and that was because of some administrative mistake. Every appeal that essentially has gone before the SCAG board has been denied based on the methodology that was prepared. And those hearings continue to occur over the next week or two. So just wanted to mention that as well. I also want to touch a little bit on Measure M. The city currently has a growth control measure, Measure M, where any land use or non-residential to residential or any upzoning, or essentially allowing more capacity on residential land, requires a ballot measure, but go before the residents of the city. Essentially, you can imagine there may be an instance in the housing element where we need to identify parcels that need to be rezoned to be able to accommodate the city's RENA allocation. We don't know that currently because we haven't completed the sites analysis yet, but it is one alternative. So what I wanted to mention in terms of that process is that essentially what would happen is the city would not be required to hold that ballot measure before October 15th, 2021. That constrains the timeline immensely because of how long it takes to prepare ballot measures. But actually the city would require to include a program that says we will take this, any potential rezones to a ballot sometime within the next 3 years. That's the deadline the city has to basically accommodate those rezones. And essentially up until that point, the city will have a what's called a conditional substantial compliance from the State Department, and they'll adopt locally with that one condition in there. And then I wanted to touch on a couple of the community outreach efforts. We held a public workshop. Because of COVID, it was a virtual public workshop, but actually giving consideration to how many people we normally see at typical city workshops. This was able to reach through the survey and through the presentation approximately 130 different individuals who responded to the survey. All materials have been provided so far in English and Spanish, including the city's website, which I'll show right here, which actually has a button where you can translate to Spanish as well. All of the materials for the housing element throughout this entire process will continue to be updated on the city's website. So if there's ever a question of where someone should go to look at the schedule for the project, look at upcoming community outreach efforts, when the public review draft is released, where that will be posted, it'll all be on the city's website on this one page so that we can keep everything consistent and in one spot. Lastly, the city did establish a steering committee, a housing steering committee to help. It's made up of what I'll call local experts, both because they have some have expertise in housing, both in development of affordable housing and market rate housing, but a larger portion have I'll call expertise in the city of Chino. That is their main role on the steering committee is that they know Chino, and they are either longtime residents, business owners, and they provide a good mixture. For us as a team, when we come in and look to craft local policy, is a sounding board that we use is very important for us. They serve a couple different responsibilities. They have monthly meetings held over Zoom. They provide their input based on local experience and knowledge of the city. They also act as a sounding board for us. We bounce our recommendations and our ideas off of them, and we're able to get a sense of the idea of what they're thinking. And then lastly, they review all draft materials, as does all members of the public through the public review draft. And they're an advocate for the housing element process. And by advocate, I don't mean that they're going around and saying it's the greatest process in the world. It's just that they're making sure that to the extent they can, they are letting people know about the housing element update, showing people how to get involved, letting people just decide to engage in the process, which we hope a lot of people do. And through the first survey, it seems like a lot of people have. So next steps. We held a committee meeting just last week. The first one, actually. There will be 4 more once a month as we go throughout this process. We're currently now at the City Council introduction, and I believe we'll be back for a progress report around March. All of these dates are tentative and subject to change, but we will provide as much notice as we can if that does occur. We also have a planning commission briefing session coming up. And then we're going to prepare the screen check draft. And what that is an internal draft for us to see if we have all the components together, what we need to review with staff, review with the steering committee, and ultimately the components that we'll bring forward to you again in that progress report before there's any public review draft that goes out so that you have the opportunity to provide comment and let us know if there's anything else you would like to see in the housing element process that is not currently in there. Then the public review draft will go out. That is a comment period for everyone. It used to be that was held the same time that HCD reviewed the document. HCD has now asked that that occur before they review the document so that all city comments can be incorporated in the document before they see it. So it'll be a roughly 30-day public review period where the document will be released, and we will hold another community outreach type effort to be able to explain the document, walk through, so that we're not just handing everyone a document that's a couple hundred pages and saying, here, read through this, and we don't expect that folks will be able to read through it and provide meaningful comments unless we provide some context to it. So we do plan to do that. Again, we will have another city council briefing session later on in the year. This will likely be around the time when we receive HCD comments and are able to bring those before you to see if there's anything that should be addressed. And then we'll continue to, if we need to, resubmit to HCD before the October 15th deadline. And ultimately, the goal of the process is to receive a letter of substantial compliance and then again adopt locally pending that one condition of Measure M. So I know that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for sitting through it. That is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as Warren Morellian and Nick as well, if you have any.
Okay, thank you very much. Council members, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes. Do you know what looking at our sphere of influence up north, do you know what the amount of units that they've allocated for the county in that area?
It's not specific to one area. We could find out the number of units that the county as a whole has received, but where they allocate those in terms of how they accommodate them depends on the characteristics and whoever's doing their housing element update.
Okay, so if we annex any area up there, we're not set to a certain amount of.
No, it would likely be associated to whatever, because the annexation would be linked to a specific project likely. So it would be associated to the number of units that came through on that project. The process is not entirely clear around that, and it'd be something to be determined once that annexation was decided. But there's not like if you annex 10 acres, there's a certain number of units for sure that will be brought over. It is a little fuzzy in that area.
Then another question. So right now we have, let's say, if we look at a location like the closed down youth authority that we have off of Euclid, and we decided that we wanted to utilize some of that land and ask the state to give it to us. Is that something that, since it's not technically land that we can build on currently, that's not anything that we can add towards our numbers because we haven't completed that process of getting that land switched over so that we can build on it?
Yes, so state-owned land generally is very difficult to include in the sites analysis because it is not land that the city has control over or that a private developer or citizen has control over. There are cities that are engaging the state over certain state-owned properties. There are a couple throughout Sandag who are currently going through that process. This is the San Diego region. So there is the opportunity to engage the state and ask what the opportunities are on that site. But it's not something that we typically do without that engagement with the state. It's not something that we just identify because the state will say that's a property that we own, and we do not have plans to currently build housing or anything on it, so it's not our realistic, doesn't have realistic capacity.
Okay, so our numbers are all going to be based on current land that is within the city that we can develop currently right now, not anything that we can annex or change through zoning.
Correct.
I would add, Madam Mayor, if I could, to the extent that the city's able to enter into some arrangement with the state that would deliver a certain number of units, then we could incorporate that into complying with our RENA numbers. So it sort of depends on the timing, and I understand the point that if we don't have them under control under some contract with the state, we couldn't take advantage of it. But if we could get ahead of it in time for the housing update, then we could use that land to satisfy some of our RENA numbers.
Correct, and just to clarify, the state itself is not allocated units, so if that land were to be brought in, there wouldn't be an additional RENA allocation. It would just be units that would be able to meet the city's need.
So they couldn't increase our numbers?
Not based on identifying land within the state-owned land.
Okay. Anything else? Chris, do you have anything? Karen or Mark on the phone, do either of you two have any comments or questions?
Mark has nothing.
Okay, Karen?
I have a question. Do we presently have parcels of land that are 30 dwelling units per acre now?
Sorry,
Karen,
I didn't.
you're breaking up again. Try a.
Do we currently have any land in town that has 30 acres at the fund?
I think her question is, do we have anything in town so far that's designated 30 an acre?
Yes, we do. We have approximately 18 acres of land, 16 to 18 in the preserve that's designated at 30 units per acre. That's undeveloped. There are a couple parcels that are designated at that density, but they are already developed.
Now, Nick, what's the density in the complexes that we have up in College Park?
So both Ivy and the Meadow Square developments were built at about 25 to 26 units per acre. And that's almost the limit you can get with a conventional construction. So that would be their stick, we call it stick built, but it's essentially wood frame, 3-story walk up. Some can have elevators. That's about the maximum you could get is about 26 to 28 units per acre. And those are subsidized projects. So they have subsidy from tax credits, county housing authority, and other elements that they're added to those. That's why the state assumes for a city like Chino and other larger suburban cities within the SCAG region that if we zone for 30 units per acre, it's likely that some of that development will be affordable because that's a density at which projects can start to qualify for some of those subsidies to underwrite some of those units to affordable rents.
And I should clarify as well, it needs to be within a zone that accommodates up to at least 30 units an acre. So, for example, if it's a zone that allows between 25 and 30 DU an acre, that would qualify in terms of being able to allocate it to meet the lower income need. If it ultimately did come in at, say, 26 units an acre, that would still be within that range and could still fit there. So that type of product could work.
Karen, anything else? Karen, did you have any other comments?
Just a comment, Mayor. I see it being extremely difficult for us to meet these. You've made those comments in the past. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I do have a couple of comments or questions, and that is, what's the status of the census so far?
So the census is currently being updated. Because of the timing, we are having to benchmark off the 2010 census and use ACS update.
I'm sorry, can you remove your mask?
Of course. So the census is currently being updated. It is not complete to my knowledge. And because of the timing of the update, needing to complete in entirety by October 15th, 2021, we are using the most recent census projections that we can, essentially. So American Community Survey data, most recently I believe is 2017, 2018 projections. So that's currently what we're using.
So the delay of the census, that's not going to impact our due date of October 2021 for the housing element?
The state is not currently moving any of the deadlines. If we do hear, because there was some, I'll say, chatter of it back a while ago, that the state is considering it, we'll definitely let the council know.
Okay.
But I'll just give you an example. The SANDAG region, the San Diego region, is currently required to have their housing elements adopted by April 15th, 2021. So essentially rolls up the state, and they have not moved that. So as we get closer to that deadline for the San Diego region, it seems unlikely that if they don't move that one, that they would move any of the others.
Okay. You mentioned San Bernardino County's numbers. We don't know how they've allocated their Reno numbers yet, but if we annex part of our sphere of influence, could the county dump a lot of their numbers onto us? Since there isn't any formula when it comes to acreage or anything?
Yeah, I would have to. I know currently, for example, the County of Orange is working with, I believe it's the City of Santa Ana, on a transfer of the arena. But again, it's directly connected to the number of units that project is is allocating. So essentially, it's a net, zero gain for the city because they are gaining a certain number of units, but also a certain number of RENA need. So it zeroes out.
Okay, but let's say the San Bernardino County has not done their housing element yet, so they have not designated where they're going to put this density. And then say we annex some of the land and the county of San Bernardino hasn't got a designation on it. Is it exempt from their numbers, or could they put an artificial number on the land, even though there's not a project?
That is a great question. Actually, I don't have a solid answer for you on that. I can research it and get back to you. You're talking about between now and October 15th if they were to annex a certain property. There would need to be some kind of methodology developed for how that would be. It wouldn't just be a dump of units, but it may be that speculating it may be that current land use that's on there and the number of units that could be built there. There may be some methodology to that. But again, I'd rather get you a correct answer and come back to you, and I'll notify staff and they can bring it back to you.
Sure, Madam Mayor, if I could, likely what would happen, because the county of San Bernardino is under the same time frame as the city of Chino to adopt their housing element. So likely what would happen is if there were any sites allocated or designated in the county's housing element that were in our sphere, we may be obligated to take those sites on. But all of that would happen through a public planning process with the county, just like the city of Chino's engaging. So we're going to have the opportunity to review the county's housing element, essentially. The number for San Bernardino County is quite large. It's 18,000. It's over 18,000. However, San Bernardino County is a rather large county, and so there's lots of area where the county can spread those around. Additionally, before the council annexes property from the council engages in a pre-zoning process. So we do have a determination of what those land uses are before they come into the city. The area that there's some uncertainty on because the law isn't hugely clear about is whether we inherit pre-designated RENA sites, and to the extent we inherit them. So that's really the unknown, but we will have a very good understanding of what the county's plan is, because they're going to be engaging in a similar plan as the city of Chino at about the same time.
Well, I would encourage us to really keep very close tabs of what the county is going to do, because I would, we're trying to master plan the sphere so that we can encourage people to come into the city and, of course, protect densities and lifestyles. And I would certainly hate to be successful in encouraging people to annex into the city of Chino and then find out that the county has dumped a bunch of housing units on it just so they can get rid of their requirements. Now, Mark had mentioned, Mayor Pro Tem Lucio had mentioned question on state land, and I have a question on that as well. These RENA numbers are being shoved down our throat, so to speak. It's been mentioned that 30 per acre probably is being built if there's some kind of subsidy available. It's my understanding that developers right now say they can't afford to build 30 an acre without those subsidies. It's just too cost prohibitive. So I think it would be only fair if the state would donate land, if they expect us to comply with ridiculous requirements, that they have skin in the game as well. So again, I encourage our staff to start working on that as soon as possible. And whether it be the Old Youth Authority or perhaps the land on Central Avenue by CIM, because that is a major corridor transportation and it is relatively close to shopping opportunities. So I do think that the state needs to have some skin in this game as well. And I think that's all that I have. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from the public or comments? Yes, sir. Come up, Stubby. Thank you, Nick.
didn't know if you could see me back there.
I saw your hand waving.
Just two quick comments. One, it's in today's construction market, it's impossible to build 30 units conventional frame. You have to go 4 over type 1 parking. Parking's always the issue.
Right.
That's going to be a killer. The other is, and I believe Nick pretty much touched on this, but we need to be very careful and be very involved with the zoning and our influence and the allocation within our influence, because once it's set by the county, we're not going to be able to change it when we annex.
I know.
So
I know
that
that.
should be a major priority.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your comments. Anyone else? Okay, this isn't a public hearing, but I think that's all. So I would entertain a motion and a second, please.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
My second motion.
Motion from Mayor Pro Tem Lucio, second from Councilman Flores. Angela, please roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Lucio,
Yes.
Councilmember Flores,
Yes.
Councilmember Comstock,
Yes.
Councilmember Hargrove,
Yes.
Mayor Ulloa.
Yes, the item passes unanimously. Item number 12, amendment number 3, preliminary engineering and design services, Pine Avenue Improvement Project, ST 203, which is from Hellman to Euclid Avenues. Our staff report this evening will be provided by our city engineer, Chris Magnoscu.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, you're being asked to approve the third amendment to the design contract with Proactive to obtain some sub-consultant services for geotechnical and signal design for Pine Avenue Improvement Project ST 203 from Hellman to Euclid. And this will involve an appropriation from the Transportation Fund over to the Preserve Bridges, Signals, and Thoroughfares Fund. For point of clarity and the new council members here, Pine Avenue between Hellman and Euclid is in the preserve. It's a master plan facility, 6 lanes, 3 lanes each direction with a raised median. Previous slide, please, Jack. Or let me click it. Thank you. It's highlighted in green. It's tough to read. Traditionally, we and still continue to condition developments to widen or improve Pine or other roadway networks in the preserve as a condition of approval. Along the way, we entitled a couple of projects where the Pine improvements became more critical in nature due to traffic impacts. And we decided that we would take the rein and procure ourselves and take this on because of multiple stakeholders in the area, Caltrans, Army Corps, Orange County Flood Control District, as well as private landowners, in which we would take the lead on the design services. So in September of 2019, you approved a agreement with Proactive to begin that design, initiate the design work to move forward. You've had 2 amendments since March of last year as well as June of last year. This will be the 3rd amendment for the geotechnical and traffic signal work. Some may ask, why are we amending it again and adding more sub-consultants? Why didn't we do this earlier? Well, 2 reasons. One was we decided to quickly get the design into Caltrans because, as you can see from the next slide, the intersection of Pine and Euclid requires some improvements for that Pine corridor between Euclid and the future Mayhew. And we decided to go to Caltrans first, get their review comments, found they wanted more of a signal design than we did not anticipate at this early stage. As such, we worked through our sub-consultant to procure those services. That's a part of tonight's action in terms of the cost, is to pay for the services for the design of the signal through a consultant that specializes in that. The second part of that is we have another project that's in entitlement now that would have actually been doing the geotechnical or the soils work for this area in question along Pine Avenue, which would be the geotechnical work, which is the earthwork recommendations and the foundation recommendations for any improvements along that route. As such, we had to take the lead on that and add those services to our Proactive contract, and therefore we're going to have those services done by Proactive. So with that, I will conclude that all this is DIF funded. No general fund is being used for this design work. This will occur this year. so we can get the design reviewed and ready to go for construction in the near future through all the permitting process. So with that, staff recommends approving the recommendation action before you tonight. That concludes my staff report. I'm prepared to take any questions as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from council?
The only question I have is, have we already gotten all the dedications for that area? Are we still working on that?
We are still working on that, mainly between the future Mayhew west to Euclid. We are working on that right now.
Nothing else?
Mark or Karen on the phone, do you have any questions on item number 12?
I was heard for. I have no questions, but
Thank you.
although I'm glad to see it one step closer.
Thank you, Mark. Karen, any questions or
Maybe.
comments?
I agree with Councilman Hargrove. I'm happy to see us one step closer before we're done.
I think we'll all be glad to see this finally come to fruition. When do you expect actual development?
Development of the construction? Well, beginning the 2 lanes, we would like to begin that this year, but that's been, Caltrans has been our slowdown. They are non-responsive more than normal. So we'd like to begin it later in the year, but we're working on getting it as soon as possible. At least the 2 lanes each direction between future Mayhew and Euclid, while the 3 lanes is still under design.
Okay.
And the right-of-way is getting obtained through various means.
Well, hopefully this will finally be completed. Thank you,
Yes.
Chris.
You're welcome.
Any members of the public have any comments? Okay, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
I second the motion.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Lucio makes the motion and Councilman Flores makes the second. Angela, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Lucio,
Yes.
Councilmember Flores,
Yes.
Councilmember Comstock,
Yes.
Councilmember Hargrove,
Yes.
Mayor Ulloa.
Yes, item passes unanimously. Item number 13, awarded of construction contract to Eastside Water Treatment Facility Expansion Project, WA19C, and approved associated expenditures. Our staff report this evening will be provided by our principal engineer, Amanda Coker.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Jack, do you have the? Oh, here we go. All right, let me just get to this full screen. Great, okay. Today I have for your consideration a rather large construction contract to expand the capacity of our Eastside water treatment plant. But before I get into that, I thought I would take this opportunity to present a holistic overview of our current water system and our big picture projects to improve the quality and reliability of our water supply. The city's drinking water supply sources consist of imported water delivered through the State Water Project, highly treated desalted water delivered through the Chino Basin Desalter Authority, and groundwater from city-owned wells. In general, each water supply source provides about 1/3 of our annual supply, but groundwater produced from city-owned wells is our most reliable supply source. Here in the city of Chino, we are fortunate to overlie a portion of the Chino groundwater basin, which is one of the largest groundwater basins in the state. The city holds production rights to produce from the basin. However, due to various water quality challenges in the portion of the basin where the city's wells are located, we have not been able to maximize groundwater production, and we've had to rely more on our purchased water supplies. Looking ahead to increased periods of drought and where the reliability of imported water may diminish, in addition to major future metropolitan water district rehab projects impacting our imported water supply pipeline, it's important to bring our wells back into service through a series of projects which will increase our water treatment capacity. So I have up on the screen a map showing the locations of our existing water supply and storage facilities with our big picture project shown in red. I'm going to quickly go over these potential projects, ending with the project we're here to discuss tonight. So in the north portion of our map, which is located outside of the city boundary, we have several high-capacity wells, well 12, and well 14, which are currently out of service due to water quality issues. So we have planned a centralized treatment plant at our State Street location located here to bring these wells back into service. And this project will considerably increase the reliability of our supply as a supplement to imported water. We've currently secured a U.S. Bureau of Reclamation grant of $750,000 for the construction portion of this project, and we will be bringing this back to you shortly for approval of the design contract. So if we move south to our centralized Benson water treatment facility, we have plans here to expand our GAC vessels from 3,500 GPM to 5,000 GPM to maximize the potential of that water treatment facility. Then if we go further south, we have wells 4 and 6 in this general location. And these wells have been out of service for quite some time, also due to various water quality issues. And this is a project we're looking at to construct another centralized treatment plant to treat both of these wells. So that'll be coming in the future, hopefully. Now, if we move to our Eastside water treatment facility located here in the city of Ontario, and I hope you can see my pointer here. So we have several projects related to the Eastside water treatment facility. The first is related to our well 11, which is located here in this general area. And this well was a really high capacity well that unfortunately we had to take offline in 2017 due to the 123 TCP MCL. So we've been looking at options to bring this well back online, and we're currently pursuing a project which is in design, which is a raw water transmission main, which is this red dotted alignment. And that is going to connect to an existing raw water transmission main, which will ultimately transmit the water to our Eastside water treatment facility for treatment. And as I mentioned, that's currently in design. So that brings me to the topic of interest tonight, which includes the 11 recommendations for your consideration, primarily concerning construction of the expansion of the Eastside treatment plant, which is doubling the capacity from 3,500 GPM to 7,000 GPM. So let me head over, to this slide, and this map is showing the site and the general layout. So the overall project is known as WA19C, and it includes the expansion of the treatment plant, including additional granular activated carbon vessels, which are depicted here, and ion exchange equipment, which is depicted top left, along with replumbing well 16, which is located on the southeast corner of the site, to the expanded plant, and a brine disposal pipeline. Brine disposal pipeline to eliminate the need for hauling waste offsite for disposal. So it's going to save on our waste costs. The brine disposal pipeline is currently at 90% design, and it will be brought to you within the next several months for award of a construction contract for that portion of the project. But the portion we're here to discuss today is the expansion of the treatment plant. And on June 10th, 2020, the project was put out to bid with council approval. During the course of the solicitation, it became apparent that to ensure a competitive bid process, a sole source component of the project, which was the ion exchange equipment, would need to be removed and procured separately. This change was made, and on December 3rd, 5 bids were received. After a thorough review with the help of our project and construction management teams, Pacific Hydrotech was deemed the lowest responsive and responsible bidder with a bid of about $6.372 million. City staff recommend moving forward with the alternate bid item, bringing the total to about $6.651 million, which is less than the engineer's construction cost estimate of about $6.944 million. And then let me just quickly move. I included all the recommendations so you can easily see them, but award of the construction contract plus construction contingency are included in recommendations 3 and 4. As I mentioned before, a sole source equipment element was removed from the bid to be procured separately. City staff negotiated directly with the vendor, Calgon Carbon, to purchase the proprietary ICE-UP ion exchange equipment and settled on a purchase price of approximately $2.4 million. Award of the professional services agreement with Calgon Carbon plus a contingency are included in recommendations 5 and 6. Hazen and Sawyer were contracted by the city to design the expanded treatment plant and have been instrumental during the bid process and during the negotiation with Calgon Carbon. To provide continuity, city staff are recommending an amendment to Hazen and Sawyer's contract in the amount of about $278,000 plus contingency to provide engineering services during construction, which is included in recommendation 8. In addition, we have included $325,000 for project management services, which is recommendation 7. When the first phase of the Eastside treatment plant was originally constructed, the City of Ontario required a development impact fund payment, which was split into 2 parts. The first payable during the first phase and the second during future construction phases. City of Chino staff have been in constant communication with City of Ontario planning and land development staff for both the expanded treatment plant and the brine line, and have been informed that the remaining DIF fee of approximately $115,000 is due upon construction of the expansion. So recommendation 10 of the staff report covers payment of that fee. Finally, we have a recommendation which is not a part of Project WA19C, but it is related. Additional supply to the Eastside plant will include well 17. So if I go back to our site map, well 17 is located on the northwest corner of the site. So that well has been drilled, but it has not been equipped. So recommendation 9 includes an amendment to Hazen and Sawyer's contract in the amount of about $325,000 plus contingency to provide the design. So the total amount requested for Project WA19C in this staff report is $10,728,906.08, which requires an appropriation of $425,000 to increase the total WA19C project budget to approximately $13.6 million, which is described in recommendations 1 and 2. We will be adjusting the total project budget again when we bring the brine line construction contract to you for your consideration. City staff have applied for a drinking water state revolving fund loan and have received initial indication from state staff that the city will be awarded a 30-year loan in the amount of $16 million at a 1.2% interest rate. The application is in its final review, and we expect to bring the final agreement for your consideration in the spring. Although the state have indicated that there is a backlog, so we're hopeful for spring. We have confirmed with the state that construction expenses are eligible for reimbursement even if they occur prior to final execution of the loan agreement. So I believe I have covered all of the recommendations. We have representatives here from our project management team, construction management team, Pacific Hydrotech, Hazen and Sawyer, and our finance department. Should you have any questions, and thank you very much.
I have to laugh because if I wasn't so intimately involved in water, this would be way over my head and my eyes would be rolling back.
I tried to keep it simple.
No, that was an excellent presentation, Amanda. Really, really good. Do you have any questions, council members?
No, I mean, I know the price tag is really, really high, but obviously with the growth that we have in the preserve and what we're being told that we have to produce as far as numbers, I mean, it's something that we have to do. I'm glad that there's obviously a low interest rate loan that would allow us to pay this over 30 years. But other than that, I have no questions.
Okay, Chris, do you have any questions? Karen or Mark on the phone, do you have any comments or questions?
Mark has no question.
Okay, Karen?
I have no questions, Mayor. I agree with the comments I've already made and for the capacity it's going to produce for us in the future.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the loan's going to be for $16 million, but the total of this project, or the Eastside plant, is $13.6 million. Is the difference going to be for the brine line?
So with the addition of the brine line, it will take us over $16 million. So the way the state calculated the $16 million was we had given them our engineer's cost estimate, which I believe was about a little over $18 million. And the SRF loan program doesn't fund projects for development. So we did a calculation of which portion would be bringing our stranded assets back online and which portion would be attributed to new development, and that's how they came up with the $16 million.
Oh, okay. Now, you also talked about wells 4, 6, and 7. And I know they're not exactly where we had suffered subsidence before, but those wells have not been online. When you bring them online, has Wildermuth done any projections on if we'll suffer subsidence again or any issues along those lines?
No, that's something that we'll need to look into. So we will be coordinating with them once we move forward with that project. But that project is a little bit lower on the list.
Okay, all right. Well, Amanda, this was an absolutely incredible presentation. You did a really, really good job.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion from Mayor Pro Tem Lucio, second from Councilman Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Lucio,
Yes.
Councilmember Flores,
Yes.
Councilmember Comstock,
Yes.
Councilmember Hargrove,
Yes.
Mayor Ulloa.
Yes, the item passes unanimously. Okay, next on the agenda is mayor and council. Oh, you know what? I failed to ask if there was anyone in the audience that had any comments on this project. Probably not. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is mayor and council reports. Mine is relatively short. On January 6th, Wednesday, I virtually attended the Omnitrans Board of Directors meeting and the San Bernardino Board of Directors for San Bernardino Transportation Authority. On Thursday the 7th, I virtually attended the Watermaster Appropriative Pool meeting and the confidential session. Also, the Chino Basin Desalter Authority Board of Directors meeting, and the IEUA Regional Sewerage Program Policy Committee meeting. One thing nice about all these virtual meetings is you don't spend a lot of time driving, and our gas expenses for the month are certainly lower than what they used to be. But I miss seeing everybody. On Wednesday the 13th, our council members and some commission members and staff attended our ethics training that was taught by our city attorney, Fred Galante. He gets entirely too excited about this stuff. And on Thursday the 14th, I virtually attended the Watermaster Appropriative Pool and the Appropriative Pool confidential session. And that is my report, except that I would like to make a few comments, general comments, and that is our country has suffered some very unfortunate violent acts and some unfortunate, very emotional times. We here in the city do obviously support our democratic processes and our Constitution and believe in peace and believe in unity. And I do not believe in my heart that we're going to suffer any of the tragedies that have been experienced in these last couple of weeks when it comes to emotional outbursts and demonstrations. But I do ask us all to remember the founders of this country and why we were founded, why we're here, what our country believes in, and our basic humanity in caring for each other and our country. We've lost a lot of our humanity, I'm afraid, because of the emotions that have been expressed in the last few months. The election is over with. A new president will be sworn in, and we must move on, regardless of who we voted for, what our personal beliefs with this election, this last election. Our community is a very special community. We've always been very close. and we've always been very caring and reached out for each other. And I ask our community to continue that. Continue caring for each other. That's very, very important. Continue caring for your families and reaching out to others that are maybe less fortunate. There's a lot of people going through tragedy right now with COVID, with financial devastation, businesses closing because they can't support themselves and their employees. So please be compassionate. We will get through these times, but it's important that our community stays very strong. And I ask you all to keep that in your prayers and continue on. Mayor Pro Tem Lucio.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep mine short as well. On the 13th of January, I attended the ethics training workshop at the Carolyn Holland's building put on by the city attorney, Fred Gallant. I have to say he was, thank you for explaining everything. You did a great presentation. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I had to listen to it virtually as opposed to being there, but
Oh, you should have been there.
I wanted to be there. And then I also attended an investment committee meeting that same day, and we went over some of the investments that we have and some of the things that we're thinking about doing. And then at night, I did the virtual meeting for the Chino Valley Fire Department Board, and it was nice. It was you were able to see employees that were getting awarded for their 5 years of service, and then you saw employees retiring. I think they had a total of 3 employees that retired with a combined 97 years of service, 2 with 29 years and 1 with 39 years. But it's good to see the transition, and obviously, you see the new coming in, and then you see the people with the tenure leaving. But it's always a shame because the people with the tenure obviously have a lot of the experience and a lot of the knowledge, but hopefully they'll be able to pass that on. One of the things I'd like to see is obviously, I enjoy the fact that the fire department comes in for the fire board and they do their presentations and they give them their certificates for their service. Maybe if we can do that here in the city council meetings for the police department, because I know we've had some retirements, especially a lot of people tend to retire in March. We could bring them in here and give them their certificates here and recognize them here so that people can see the dedicated people that we've had here in Chino PD. I think that would be something that we should look to start doing to honor them. I don't know if any of you have ever had a body scan, but I had one recently, and I'll tell you, if you've never had one, you should have one. They'll tell you everything about your body. Fortunately, I have a wife that spoke to the doctor, and I've had tests and doctor's appointments and everything else. So I got to give it to her. She's on the ball, and I thank her for that. But so if you need to go get checked, to make sure you stay on that, it's important. I've had a lot of friends that have had them. And they've caught a lot of things before they've gotten out of control, and so I recommend it. And just like the mayor said, obviously tomorrow is a big day. There's going to be some happy, some unhappy people. Unfortunately, that's what happens in elections. But we do need to move forward. There's going to be some changes, obviously, but at the end of the day, that's what happens with elections. And just maintain, and then for all those people that are suffering from COVID, I have a couple of friends that are currently in the hospital as a result of it. Keep them in your prayers, and I know everybody has people out there that they know. Just make sure that you're there for the family in any way you can. So that's all I have, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Flores.
Good evening, City of Chino. On the 13th, I too attended the ethics training provided by our city attorney, and I learned a lot. That was a pretty good day. On the same exact day, I too attended the investment committee, a committee meeting, and we went over again some investments that the city has for ourselves, and that was actually my first meeting, so I was glad to learn a lot, and it was a great introduction for me. And this past weekend, I also attended a community gardening workshop. I'm not a gardener myself, but I figure, hey, let me get involved in different things I haven't been involved with in the city, and that was a pretty good workshop I attended. And for the city of Chino, tomorrow, just, take care of yourselves, do what you have to do to take care of your property, take care of your neighbors, and Mary, that's it. That's all I have for the city of Chino.
Thank you, Chris. Councilmember Comstock.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to apologize to the community for not being present tonight, but a member of my family has tested positive for COVID. Although I tested negative, I took another test today, and just to be on the safe side, I'm awaiting my results in the next 24 hours. I'm hoping to be well and back into the swing of things and back on calendar here soon. My family's doing well, so thank you for your prayers. And thank you, Councilman Lucille, for just bringing up the subject of COVID and Americans. Take care of our community and get well. The only thing I have to report tonight is I also attended ethics training online. It was very good presentation by the city attorney. I would like to ask the city manager tonight if he wouldn't mind for himself or a member of staff to provide an update on the closure of Bickmore since it's been closed for quite some time. Thank you all. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Karen. Councilman Hargrove.
What it now? Is it on?
You're on.
Okay. With technical trouble, it's all on my fault. Anyways, I have not attended the council virtual ethics training. Yeah, so that's all I attended. Had a good holiday yesterday, although most of my kids are still in quarantine. I'm finally out of that. I went 14 days just to make sure. Never caught anything. But don't let that fool you. Okay. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Stay well. Okay, City Manager Ballantyne.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First, let's address Councilmember Comstock's question. She had a question as it relates to what's the status of Bickmore. So with that, I'd ask our city engineer if you can provide an update on that.
Okay.
Thank you. To address the inquiry from Councilmember Comstock, Bickmore ran into, well, let's put it this way, the contractor ran into an unexpected below-ground state water line that wasn't marked, wasn't on the plans. They're going through a slight redesign, and they have to adjust the location of the storm drain work that has to go below Bickmore. So they're in the process of doing that. They've asked for an extension to mid-March. We think it could be done a little quicker. It might adjust our overall schedule in the preserve, and we'll update that as I get more information. I will say that we're really going to be focusing on the Kimball full closure, which is in May, June of this year. That's where it's more critical. The partial closures we can work with, but the Bickmore closure should be done within the next 2 months at most.
Okay, good. Thank you, Chris. That
You're
poor
welcome.
street has sure had issues.
Yes, it has.
Thanks, Chris. I have 3 other things. I just want to give folks a heads up that the 60 freeway is going to be closed as they demo a portion of the pipeline bridge. So that's this Thursday, the 21st. Also, there'll be a closure on Friday, the 22nd. Also want to highlight Riverside Drive. I appreciate everybody's patience as we had a complete closure on Riverside Drive. So we can install a storm drain, and that was successfully completed last week. So we're going to be able to retain at least a lane in each direction for the rest of this week. So that went well, but again, thanks for everybody for their patience. And then the last thing I want to highlight is we're going to have our Sphere of Influence study session that's scheduled for next Wednesday, January 27th at 9 a.m. It's all the intention is to provide the council with an update of the study itself. There will be no policy decisions made at that meeting. And again, I think I mentioned it, I just want to be clear that it'll be over at the police department.
And that's open to the public?
It is open to the public, that's correct.
Okay.
And that concludes my reports. Thanks,
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you, Matt. Fred, City Attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just want to thank everybody that attended my the presentation I gave on the AB 1234 ethics training and all your enthusiasm and the material I covered. No, in all seriousness, the council members and commissioners and staff that attended asked some really good questions, and it was really a pleasure to do the presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chief Simmons, you have a visitor this evening.
I do, Mayor. So at your request at the last meeting, you asked me to bring in Susie. Let me see if I can get a good view here of her. So Susie is our police department station dog. And we got her last year, 2020. It was a perfect year for her to join us. Susie came from Guide Dogs of the Desert. A donor paid her fees and gave her to us as a department. And she's just been a great addition, really helps our personnel out when they're having a stressful day. They can spend some time with Susie and get them through that. She's also available for our victims. Because of COVID, we haven't had an opportunity to use her in that way, but looking forward to using that in the future. So I'll be here after the meeting, and everybody can have a chance to meet Susie, and she's an incredible addition to our department.
She is. She's adorable.
All right, now come on over here, Susie, and let's see if she'll let me give my report. All right. So. Okay, my presentation tonight is on the 2020 crime statistics for the city of Chino and the trends that we've experienced. And I want to start off by saying that the COVID-19 pandemic has made 2020 a very atypical year in many ways, and that includes our crime. And I don't unfortunately see that changing in the short term. When the first stay-at-home order was issued in mid-March, there was an immediate decline in calls for service and reported crime. In fact, we ended the year with over 7,000 less calls in 2020 than we had in 2019. But if you remember, for a couple months there, it was a ghost town. Yeah. People were at home, and things were quite slow. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for the criminals to adapt to the unique circumstances, and we began to see calls for service increase again. With more people at their homes, thank you. With more people at their homes, we saw reductions in residential burglaries and porch pirate thefts, but increases, unfortunately, in auto theft and aggravated assaults. There we go. So I prefer to look at crime data over time because so many things outside of our control can contribute to various anomalies on a year-to-year basis. With that said, this slide tracks Part 1 violent crimes over the past 35 years and compares the city of Chino with the state and national averages. But if you'll know, the 2020 numbers aren't in there for the state and the national because they don't come out until October. We have our own data, so we're able to put that in there. Part 1 violent crimes include robberies, rapes, aggravated assaults, and homicides. And Chino saw a decrease in all violent crime categories except for aggravated assaults, which had a 24% increase. This resulted in a 7% increase overall for our violent crime. As you look at the slide, I think it's also important to note that California passed a 3 strikes proposition back here in 1994, which is where we start to see things decline. And in 2014, right over here, is when we passed Proposition 47, which reduced penalties for certain crimes. I'd also like to point out that Chino's violent crime rate remains relatively low compared to the 1990s, as does the state and national average, and we've tracked for the past over 20 years underneath both the state and national average. Though the state and national numbers aren't in, all indications are their numbers are going to be up as well. We're seeing that across the U.S.
Wes, didn't they recategorize some crimes, though, and take them out of the violent category? Didn't that also
that did not impact the UCR stats.
It didn't?
It did
Okay.
not. But UCR is going away next year and will be under the National Incident-Based Reporting System. So things will look a little bit different, but for right now, it didn't change how UCR records those stats. Okay. So aggravated assaults per year. Again, in our violent crimes, aggravated assaults are the only ones that went up this year, and they went up significantly. This slide represents the past 4 years, and you can see where they've gone since 2016. Overall, minus 2017, which was down, the trend has been up. Though we did see an increase in 2020 in shootings, most of our aggravated assaults involve domestic disputes or known offenders. I want to assure the community that it is not common for random people to be assaulted. Most of the time, they're known offenders. And then Mayor Pro Tem Lucio asked us about assaults on officers. And so this graph represents assaults on officers, which can be anything from spitting in an officer to shooting in an officer, which we had this past year. Though assaults on an officer were down when you compare the 2020 to 2019, but I believe that can also be contributed to stay-at-home orders because calls for service were down. But if you look at the 5-year trend, based from 2016 to now, it's a 39% increase during that time. And then Part 1 property crimes. Overall, we saw a 6.5% decrease in reported property crimes from 19 to 20. And this includes burglaries, which were down 27% because, again, people are at home. You're not going to have your house burglarized generally if you're at home. And thefts were down 9.5%. Again, you get your Amazon packages delivered. Since you're at home, you're immediately able to bring those packages into the house. But auto theft was up 53%. We saw a huge increase. Crime of opportunity, a lot of vehicles on the roads, and very little consequences. I attribute the increase in auto thefts to numerous things, but primarily the governor's order that prohibited the Department of Corrections from accepting any new inmates. That went into effect in March. The directive to release current inmates early, and the zero bail, if you remember when that was passed, for several months we had. And then just the slowdown in the criminal justice system during COVID. Less judges, less attorneys able to show up to work. Though we can't control what happens to criminals after they are arrested, I want to assure you that we will do all we can to make sure they're caught if they come to Chino and commit crimes. And again, as you see, we're continuing to trend down here. It'll be interesting to see where the state and federal numbers go, but I suspect they'll be in line with our numbers here as well. Oh, and then just lastly, I'd like to end on a positive note and share that your approval of the automated license plate reader system expansion that we did at the earlier part of 2020 increased our license plate readers from 35 to 62, and this resulted in the recovery of 117 stolen vehicles, the stopping of 10 wanted felony suspects, and the arrest of 166 criminals, along with the development of numerous investigative leads. With the implementation of our LPR system, we increased the number of stolen vehicles we recovered by over 100 a year and prevented countless new crimes, as many of the people we caught in those stolen vehicles we found are from outside of our community, and the only reason they're coming here is to commit additional crimes in that stolen vehicle. Also, our real-time crime center continues to be a valuable resource to us, and in fact, just last night, our officers responded to a domestic disturbance. The suspect involved in that crime had fled prior to, but our real-time crime center analyst was able to locate and determine what their vehicle was, get officers to that vehicle. They were able to safely stop that suspect, and lo and behold, as he steps out of the car, a live bullet falls off of his lap. We detain him, and he's a convicted felon for manslaughter and had 2 loaded guns in his car. So again, we were able to catch him before he could commit any more additional crimes, and that's occurring on a regular basis, our real-time crime center being able to assist us in solving those crimes. So that's the presentation I had for you tonight, but I'm available for any questions you might have as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. Good presentation. Mark?
How's it going, Chief?
Good.
One of the reasons that I asked for this presentation is, as you know, during the summer we had some protesters and some protests that were going on about defunding the police. And we had some people that came in the city council meeting and said that we should defund the police department. And I I quoted Leo Terrell, who was a well-known civil rights attorney, who said, when you defund the police department, the only real people that suffer are people within low-income communities because they don't have anybody to protect them. So I just wanted to highlight what our numbers were, although that crime is going up throughout the state of California. Our numbers, although aggravated assaults are going up, our numbers remained relatively low. But to give you an example of the Los Angeles Police Department, who did away with their Metropolitan Division or significantly cut their Metropolitan Division, as well as their gang units, just in the area of South Los Angeles, compared between January of 2020 to January of 2021, their shooting victims have gone up 742%, where they had 59 in 2021 so far, as opposed to 7 in 2020. So that's why I think it was important to bring this up for the community to hear that this is the reason why we don't defund our police departments, because we have a certain quality of life that we expect here in the city of Chino. And the only way we're going to be able to keep that type of lifestyle is we got to make sure that we have the proper policing and that we don't believe in defunding the police department. Thank you, Wes. I just had one other question besides that. I saw that the signs went up on Euclid Avenue, no parking.
Yes.
When are we going to start enforcing that? I know we have to give them some time before we actually start citing people.
Generally 30 days, but we should be out there warning them now and then be able to start citing them after that.
Thank you.
Good presentation. Chris, anything?
I just want to say thank you for your commitment to excellence here for the city of Chino, and thank you and your officers for all the work you have been doing and the work you guys continue to do.
Thank you very much, and I want to just add to that, thank you, council, for continuing to fund us and ensuring that we have the resources to do the job we need to do.
Well, over the years, we've had very, very few complaints about the police department. I think there's a great partnership between our community and the PD.
Absolutely.
And especially with the fire department as well. And I think we should acknowledge that every chance we get and treasure it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And take good care of Susie.
Absolutely.
Okay, do we have anybody here this evening from the fire department? I don't see anyone. Okay, apparently no report from them. So,
Mayor, I did get a text from our chief. They are getting a lot of wind calls, so that they're running around right now. And again, I just want to suggest to folks that if they could stay home tonight. I mean, we just lost a significant tree out here blocking Chino Avenue, so I would encourage folks to stay home during this wind event.
yeah, it's blowing.
Mayor, pardon me, we do have someone from the fire district on the webinar who would like to address the council.
Oh, terrific. Okay. Go ahead. Are they there? Sounds like we might be having technical difficulties.
Hello, Dave Williams. If you can hear us, if your microphone, I believe, is unmuted, you can go ahead and speak. Oh, pardon me, Mayor, we lost the connection.
Okay. Well, perhaps we'll hear from him next meeting. So with that, we will adjourn in memory of Revis Halter, also known as Ma Chino, and by some of us also known as Johnny. Our next meeting in the City Council will be a joint workshop of the City Council and the Chino Planning Commission regarding the city's sphere of influence, to be held at the Chino Police Department Community Room located at 5450 Guardian Way on January 27th at 9 a.m. Our regular meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 2nd at 7 o'clock and closed session at 6 o'clock if necessary in these council chambers. With that, we are adjourned.